Good evening again to all of our viewers out there. We want to say welcome to another edition of my Lutheran Connections. Today happens to be Father's Day. We want to wish every one of our team members on set happy Father's Day, and also to our guests, um, the Reverend Thomas Z. P. and um, our father, Councilor William Buxton Cully Sr. We want to wish him happy Father's Day. And to everyone, our bishop elect, our uh, current bishop, and just everyone, all of the fathers in our church, we want to wish you all happy Father's Day. Um, Today, we are going strictly to the topic: is constitutional reform the way forward for unity and development in the LCL? How and why? Today we have two distinguished guests. They are here to discuss the topic. We also have other guests that will be joining us very shortly. But I just want to quickly again reintroduce our my colleagues. Today we have our brother Josiah Jokai. He's there joining us from our studios there in Connecticut. Um, it's very sunny in Connecticut today, and also our and also our ambassador, the ambassador there in Freetown, Sierra Leone, there with our studios there in Freetown, Sierra Leone, and I'm here in Atlanta, Georgia. So again, we want to say welcome, folks, and let us all have a wonderful time as we celebrate Father's Day today. Um, we're gonna go strictly to our studios there in Freetown, Sierra Leone, and the sorry, we're gonna go straight to Connecticut, and our host, our lead host for today is going to be taking charge of our program today. Is our brother Josiah Jokai. Brother Jokai, how is Connecticut today?
Well, you were just guessing. You say it's sunny in Connecticut today.
I know, I know it's sunny down here in Atlanta. So
No, but we are in two different regions, man. I'm on the East Coast. Yeah. Okay. The weather here today we have 71. Is yes sunny as you said, but it's partly cloudy. So you can see me in my T-shirt, and I'm sure that's why you were guessing that
I'm doing almost 90 degrees. So I think I'm okay with that.
you are excellent. You are
Yeah.
good. Good luck. Good luck with your hot weather. Well, folks, this is my Lutheran Connections TV. You are most welcome. Every Sunday we are here to discuss all things Lutherans. Here we ask the questions, and we expect our guests to respond, And we also attach the expression with no emotions. Jerry, the ambassador, is the one who coined that. So we are here to discuss matters, related to the development, the growth of our church, and we are very lucky, very lucky. You don't get this easily. To have on set today two distinguished personalities of the Lutheran Church in Liberia, Pastor Thomas Inape, William Buxton Colley, a legal luminary. And we want to say welcome to you, the audience. We are set to go. And I will lay the premise of our discussion, and I will ask our guests and the ambassador and Willie to bear with me a little bit because I will give a small historical context and, to set the basis for the conversation. We all know that the LCL is inarguably one of the oldest Christian denominations in Liberia. And obviously, we are all exceptionally proud, of the thriving history of our church. And in particular, we are very proud to be called Lutherans. I am proud, you are Pastor Pay, with boxing, Jerry, we are all proud to be Lutherans, and proud of our history. It is now about 162 years since the Lutheran Church was founded in Liberia and the African region by the Lutheran Church of America. Now it is called the ELCA. We all know that. That was just a little bit of history. So after 162 years of existence, the key questions that, continues to linger is, are we proud of our legacy as a church? And the resounding answer for me, I don't know about you, for me is yes. And that the Lutheran Church in Liberia is, is proudly recorded on the positive pages of history, for effectively spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ through preaching, healing, and teaching within and across the borders of Liberia, consistent with scriptures. The church has and it continues to win, many people unto Christ through the gospel, through great healthcare, education, social development, and relief services. And ultimately, each of us on the set here today, like I said from the outset, we are exceptionally proud to be Lutherans. However, in spite of this great legacy, many Lutherans hold the belief that there's consistent decline in the commitment of Lutherans to the service of the church. We may all differ, but there are pundits who believe that Lutherans, are of that view. While there's no scientific proof of this belief, there seems to be an indication of division in the church arising from governance of the church. We could also agree or disagree on that. Some have decried, for example, that the pension scheme is very bad for the pastors. Others have complained that there are disparities in wages, in remunerations, and in housing. Some have complained that there has always been serious concern about certain projects and programs being dominated by a certain group of individuals, forming little dynasties, for the lack of better word, And recently there's a new divisive dimension that has evolved, this quote unquote diaspora Lutherans versus Lutheran Liberia or local Lutherans, And according to legal pundits, the latter has serious constitutional implications and will be destructive if it is not curtailed at this point. So when you put all of these claims together, they form a magnitude of leadership issues. Okay. And so the question is, do we need constitutional reform, and do we need it now in order to fix these problems and put the LCL on the right trajectory? Do we need that? So for today's discussion, that's the basis for today's discussion. And we will ask the questions, the guests will respond to the question, and then the audience will certainly be the judge. Ambassador, over to you there in Freetown.
Thank you so much for that very colorful premise, Josiah. I mean, you gave us a very, very brief but insightful story of the history of the Lutheran Church in Liberia. So without waste of time, we just want to go straight to our guest, Reverend Pay. The first question to you, and maybe after then the Councillor Colley can take on. Firstly, do we need a reform in the Lutheran Church in Liberia? Is it structural reform? What kind of reform do you think? How? What?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think you can hear my voice. I've been having fever, so I almost didn't come to this show. But you know that I have promised, because of the sweeping statement my learning counselor and my brother calling me the other day about Maki and I thought to address that first. But again, when I saw the bulletin, I saw that you have published something positive. And I decided that there is no need to argue with a colleague whom I counsel and I even serve communion to. And I can't allow him to he and I to argue about anything like that. However, I'd like to address your question and to say to this body that that question is belated. If you ask me why, the 19th biannual convention held in Banga did set into place the need for constitutional reform. Also, the report of the legal committee, when we had this uh, constitutional argument over the candidacy of some of the people, specifically over the candidacy of Guba, the legal committee, because I was the one who raised objection based on the Constitution at the time. When this thing went to the legal people, they gave a position. In that position, they said that there was ambiguity within the Constitution, which we all agree. And then they said it was due to the negligence of the leaders of the church not to have seen this ambiguity within the Constitution. And then they kind of threw us into another situation where all the pastors had to go to Phoebe and to invite the bishop to sit and talk about this, because there was a need for us to talk as minister on this ambiguity and blaming the bishop for negligence. I mean, it was a strong attack on the Episcopal office of our church, so we needed to handle that. And I'm glad the bishop, out of respect for this church, for God and this church, and the pastors came there. And then we ironed everything out, and then we came back and we said that LCL matters more than us as individuals. So from that point, we went back.
Pastor, you just struck something that meeting was very tense. And my understanding is that the bishop was even threatening with a vote of no confidence. Was that true?
That's not true. That is not true. Bishop was never threatening. The meeting had tension. Excuse me, had tension. The tension was about the Constitution and the release from the legal committee. But it was not a tension that threatened the bishop. No, we are mature pastor. We wouldn't have done that. Okay. So bishop, having wisdom, handled it in the most appropriate way, and we all were satisfied, and we left from there. So getting back to the biannual convention, the 19th biannual convention, it was a resolution that this constitution be revised. And I said, let it be rewritten. But my answer to your question is yes. Because of the way our constitution is written, it gives room for a lot of conflict. Because it's ambiguous. Actually, if you look at it, there's a lot of ambiguity within the Constitution. It doesn't address a lot of things. They talk about the personnel manual. The personnel manual doesn't give even the explanation to what the bylaw is saying. So if you took a constitutional issue and then you went back to the Constitution, you may be defeated. When Goba and I went there, I must admit, yeah, he defeated me because the Constitution was ambiguous in places where I had my reliance on, but there was another place where it didn't say anything to that. So I must admit that I just left that, and then we went to the elections. So to answer your question, yes, for a better Lutheran church in Liberia, there is a need to have credible people, and I emphasize credible people, legal-minded people, with lay people with wisdom, to sit down, look at our Constitution, and contextualize it so that it will have a place for everyone. That's what I have to say to that for now.
Okay, Reverend, thank you. Joe, before you come in, Councillor Colley, we are looking at unity and development. Oh, wow. I think Councillor Colley dropped off. Anyway, when he comes back, we'll continue. Yeah, I guess so. When we come back, we'll continue. But Reverend Pay, to you quickly, maybe Councillor Colley is trying to get back on. I hope he does. I see that he's trying to get back on there. While he's coming on, Reverend Pay, you made some very good statement talking about the 19th biannual convention that set the pace. And but we want to know exactly from you. Yes, it set the,
I
the
think we should
pace,
go
but
to boxing, Councillor Colley now.
Councillor Colley is back now. Reverend, we'll come back to you. Councillor Colley, you are back now. So, Councillor Colley, sorry for the internet fluctuation. We know it's not easy. But our question to you,
Brother Josiah, are you getting me?
Councillor Colley, my question.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, sorry. Okay, go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah. Okay, good. My question to you, Councillor Colley, is you are a legal luminary in the Lutheran Church, and I think you have spent some time around the Lutheran Church in Liberia, and you are filled with the Constitution, especially when it comes to constitutional matter. As a legal practitioner, what are some of the lacunas that you have seen in the Constitution of the LCL, and what's your suggestion in terms of reform, structural reform, administrative reform, etc.?
Are you guys getting me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
There will be a delay. There will be a delay.
So
just go ahead. Just go ahead and talk. Can you hear us? Can you hear us, Councillor?
If you can hear us, go ahead, please.
All right. Yeah, I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you, bro. I'm hearing you.
Did you get the question?
Let me just say this. The internet was fluctuating, so I did not get all of what Pastor P said.
No. We raised a question. Then maybe you can go back to Pastor P, but we raised a question, and I want you to please first of all focus on the question. Our question to you, because we're setting the basis. We know it's going to get hot in here, but we're setting the basis here. So bit by bit, the question is, as a legal practitioner, legal luminary, and an individual who has been around the Lutheran Church, for some times now, what are the lacunas you have identified, the identifiable gaps, lacuna that you have seen? Oh wow, this internet seems to be trouble. Joe, I'll leave it with you to please go ahead.
Jerry, here we are. I am really excited to announce, Pastor Mackay, Pastor J. Louis Mackay, Pastor Jill, and these are two former pastors of my then parish, the St. Peter's Lutheran Parish. These are people who, I walked through their hands and practically was guided, by them. I enjoy their leaderships. I must admit, here on this set, I'm proud to have both Pastor Mackay and Pastor Pei here. They are great resources of our church, assets, of our church that we are very proud of. Pastor Mackay, you are welcome to my Lutheran Connections TV.
Thank you for having me.
Great.
Did
you get me?
Yes.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be a part of the show tonight.
Wonderful. It's great. So you are going to be here along with Pastor Pei and Councillor William Boxing Colley to discuss, the topic is constitutional reform, the way forward for unity and development for the Lutheran Church in Liberia. We will be looking at some of the issues. We'll lay the premise. I don't know if you got the premise prior to getting on set, but as the discussion progresses, you will get a better understanding of the issues we're discussing. But generally, that's the topic. We're looking at constitutional reform in the LCL. And graciously, Pastor P has just provided a good information. And this is legal because according to him, the 19th Biennial Convention actually passed a resolution for constitutional reform. I will come to the question of why the delay to this point, that we have not done that since that was passed, as a resolution. But we now have Councillor William Boston, College Senior. I'm sure he's okay now.
Yeah.
Councillor, are you okay now?
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay.
Great. So, the topic is constitutional reform, the way forward for unity and development in the LCL. And we are going to gauge your opinions as a Lutheran on one hand and as a legal luminary on another hand, somebody who understands the laws of our land and also the law of the church that you belong to, the constitution of the church that you belong to. So we want to hear your opening statement. Do we really need constitutional reform to solve some of the problems that are outlined in the premise of the conversation, including what do we really need constitutional reform? If so, how do you think we can approach it?
And Joe, before he continues to answer, I just want him to weave it in with what are the identifiable, like I said, what are the identifiable gaps? I mean, so we'll go straight to the point.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. Let me thank you guys for this program. It gives us the opportunity to state our views on the current state of our church. And speaking to the question, whether we need constitutional reform, I say yes. I have been reading our Constitution for some time, and I don't want to discredit those who crafted the Constitution. I listened to Brother Isaac Govego the other Sunday, and he talked about the amount of efforts that went into drafting the Constitution. What he said is true. Very few persons have built themselves to the core of the church. And so when a document like the Constitution is crafted, over time, there will be need for changes in the Constitution. It may not necessarily mean that those who crafted the Constitution did not do a good job. So let me give them the credit for what they did. But considering the number of years that have passed and the changes that have occurred in the church is a developing church. There will always be the need to relook at our policies, the Constitution, and other rules that govern our church. But Jared talked about those points that I have been able to identify that will require amendment of the Constitution. Several of them. I would just mention very few. Firstly, we all agree the system church, which we all witnessed during the lives change. The convention took a decision, to move away from the system of election. That we need amendment. 11, Section 7A. These are just a few points I will share with you. Article 11, Section 7A of the Constitution is titled Vacancy of the office of bishop due to sickness, death, or any other cause. The EC shall appoint an acting bishop to fill the void until a special convention is held. Now, Pastor P was talking about ambiguity and provisions that do not meet the objective of clarity. These provisions, when identified, will need to be amended because they constitute sources of conflict, sources of confusion in the church. If you read this provision that I just read, the EC shall appoint an acting bishop to fill the void until a special convention is held. The question is, what is the yardstick for appointment of an acting bishop? Other constitutions will say the EC shall appoint the most senior pastor to fill the void held for a new bishop. Out the most senior, it room for confusion, but it can lead confusion in the church. It gets to that point, and the EC to appoint them a question, which would try to avoid people to determine among us who is right, who is wrong. Personnel. It says retirement in the LCL shall be by tenure or age. Whichever comes first. Whichever comes first, tenure or age. By tenure, 25 years of service. I don't know, again, whether the convention has passed a resolution amending some of these provisions. That is the point I'm coming to. One very important component of lawmaking is publication. So whenever resolutions are made, and these resolutions are not circulated to the parishes, they are not placed on a website run by the Lutheran Church where people can access. They are not placed in an information center where Lutherans can access to buy, to read for themselves. That law does not meet the publication requirement. So you see, we'll be discussing from the Constitution, and we don't know which one of these provisions past conventions have passed on, have amended. You see, but as it is, the Constitution that I have, it says retirement in the church shall be by tenure or age, whichever comes first. By tenure, 25 years, by age, 65 years. The exception in that provision has to do with the bishop. It says when a pastor becomes bishop and attains the 25 years or 65 years, he remains bishop until his tenure ends, then he retires. But someone could ask another question. What happens to a pastor who attains the requirement but is qualified by an election committee to contest the bishop post? Let's look at it. It's just a question I'm putting to you, because this provision talks about pastors who have not met the requirement for retirement. They become bishop. Why serving as bishop? If they attain the age of 65 or the 25 years of service, they will not be retired. They will stay as bishop until the tenure ends. They get retired. All right? So the question is, whether we are observing these provisions, we just came from convention, whether we are observing these key provisions of the Constitution. That is one of the points. Now, I take you to Article 11. Article 11, Section 8. It talks about the qualification of bishop. That was one of the
I think Joe, we got some challenge with the internet.
Yeah, go ahead, Father Colley. Go ahead.
All right, okay. So I was talking about Article 11, Section 8. Josiah, you are talking. Am I? Okay, all right. I was talking about Article 11, Section 8 of the Constitution, which talks about qualification of bishop. If you read through the qualification of bishop as laid out by the Constitution, the argument that came out before about roster versus ITIF will not be seen in here. And this is the provision of the Constitution that was used by the Election Commission, the Election Committee, that was published as the eligibility criteria for bishop. What was published by the Election Committee was exactly that. Means that if there's any other requirement for the post of bishop in the Lutheran Church, it should have been included under this provision, or this provision should make reference to it. But if this provision does not make reference to it, it cannot be a requirement for the post of bishop. And if you read the requirements laid out here, it says the candidate shall be above reproach, shall have one wife or one husband, shall be temperate, sensible, dignified, hospitable, and an able teacher, must be able to manage his or her household, must be thought of by others in and out of the church. Now down here it says must have a minimum of master's degree in Christian theology and knowledge of church administration a plus. It goes down to say must have been a pastor of the LCL for not less than 10 years and must have served in areas of increasing responsibility. These are all the requirements under this provision of the Constitution. So when someone comes to raise the issue of ITIC as against roster, it is a source of confusion in the church. It is a source of conflict. We should be speaking from the Constitution. All right? We should be speaking from the Constitution. I said something. I said if there's any other eligibility requirement other than what is laid out here, this provision should have referenced it, or it should have been included under this provision, because this is the provision that speaks to eligibility for the post of bishop, right? So that argument that came out, you remember when I sent a text and said, I want to see the provision of the Constitution that talks
Joe,
about
you're on mute. If you are talking, Joe,
these
you're on mute.
are the kind of arguments that
Hello,
trigger
Councillor?
that trigger conflict in the church.
Councillor Colley?
Right? So now.
Councillor Colley?
Yes.
I know there's a delay in the transmission of the voice. You know, I understand, but can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Councillor?
go ahead. Just
right, Councillor, I was trying to say that you have provided so much information
I'm hearing you.
within your opening statement. You know, we would like for you to just hold on a little bit so that we make a round, you know, in the room. We get the views of others, their opening statements, and then we'll come back to you because there is really a time for question and answer. But let me just say that you have done extremely well in confirming the need for constitutional reform. You also concur with Pastor Pei, you know, that there are ambiguities in our constitution that require changes. That is very good. You have also identified some of the areas in the Constitution, in fact, coming up with provisions in the Constitution, you know, as areas that require changes in the Constitution. I think that is helpful in the entire process. I wanted to go to Reverend McKay for him to make his opening statement, but I just realized that he dropped off for now. We will get back to him for his opening statement when he comes back. But I want to take this time to welcome Reverend Zexter Lila Yapazua. He is one of the co-hosts on the show. I see Reverend McKay is back on. Reverend McKay, we would like to take your opening statement on this whole issue of constitutional reform in the church. Is that something you believe is relevant for the unity and development of the church? Something that will put us back on the trajectory, on the right trajectory? What is your opening statement on that, sir? Pastor Pei, if you are speaking, Pastor McKay, you are speaking, we cannot hear you. Maybe you need to make some adjustments. Okay, so Willie, I know
Thank
Willie.
you. First,
oh, good. Go ahead, Pastor.
thank you very much. Yeah, the internet connectivity down here in Monrovia is very bad.
Yeah. Quite understandable.
Are you getting me?
Yes. Yes.
Are you getting me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes. We are live, Reverend.
Oh,
Hello?
Yes, Reverend McKay, you are
we
live,
getting you,
and
Martin.
you are very live. Reverend McKay, you are live. Um,
Okay.
there are some
Can you
technical.
work with Reverend Marquet to help address the technical issue? But I'd like to come
Yeah.
back to Councillor Colley. Councillor Colley, you identify a critical area in the Constitution, talking about the list of the items that constitute eligibility for one to contest for the bishop position in the church. That is critical. You said missing from that list is the issue of roster versus active. You said it is not inclusive. Are you trying to say that that aspect is not constitutional at all? It should not form part of the conversation on the qualification of a candidate? Is that the point you're making? Councillor Colley? Councillor Colley is frozen.
The internet seems to be a challenge for us today.
Right.
We try.
Pastor Pay is on. Yeah, we will keep trying. Pastor Pay is on. And I don't know how Pastor Pay is doing the magic. Pastor Pay, maybe you need to send text messages to Reverend Pay, Reverend Mackey, and Councillor Colley. They need to know the secret to know why you are stable. Your internet is stable and it's going fine. Yeah. Oh, Reverend Mackey. Reverend Mackey, can you hear me?
Oh. Hello?
Go ahead, Reverend McKay.
We can hear you.
Hello?
Reverend Mackey, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. Do you get me? Are you getting me? Hello?
Go
Yes,
ahead,
we are
Reverend
getting you
McKay.
now. Just stay in that position. Just stay in that position, and then you can speak.
Reverend McKay, since video
Hello?
consumes a lot of data, maybe if you can turn your video off and remain on audio, we can still take that.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead, Reverend McKay. We can hear you very well.
Are you getting me?
Yes. Okay. Reverend Pay, can you please check your WhatsApp message? I'm gonna message you, please, Reverend Pay.
Okay, good. I was going to go to Reverend Pay, but I won't. I need to go to Councillor Colley to provide this clarification before we go to Reverend Pay. Councillor Colley, I'd just like to know if you can hear me clearly. Are you hearing me, sir?
What was that?
Yes. Okay, good. So you made a very good point, a cardinal point regarding eligibility for the position of bishop. And you said the requirements are purely and strictly constitutional. The idea of roster or active does not exist in the list of requirements. And so it must not form part of a conversation regarding the eligibility of a candidate for the bishop position. Is that so?
Counselor, you are on mute. If you are speaking, you are also on mute. So
Counselor,
maybe
you
you
are
can
muted.
unmute yourself. Yeah.
Please unmute yourself. The counselor has gone. Reverend Pay is back. Reverend Mackey is back. Reverend Mackey, can you hear us now?
And maybe if Reverend McKay can unmute himself, then we will hear him.
Wow.
We are having internet issues today, and
Reverend
I
Pay,
can't just believe it that Reverend Pay is so relaxed and
Reverend Pay,
Reverend Pay,
what's going on? You know, I want to let a cat out of the bag. Reverend McKay,
Let
Reverend Pay.
me say this to you.
Uh-huh.
Let me let me say this to you. Just how Monrovia is divided politically, so the internet reception is divided.
So, so Reverend P, I want to ask this question. So you want to tell me that um
Yeah.
you are sharing the same politically geographical location with our bishop elect? The reason why
No,
I
the
asked
bishop elect is in
the,
Phoebe right now as I speak.
because the reason why I asked that question is I was on a video conference with him. It did not even shake an inch. Crystal clear reception. So
That was Phoebe.
I'm thinking, are you kidding me?
But Willie,
Hello,
Willie,
are you getting me?
Willie.
Yeah, Pastor McKay.
Go ahead, Brother McGee.
Hold on. Pastor McKay, can you hear us?
Yeah, I hear you. Do you hear
Very
me?
good.
Yes,
Very good.
Yeah.
yes,
Very
very
good.
good, very good.
Now we got
Very
you.
good.
Pastor McKay, at least you are
The
on.
first
and
thing I like to
Pastor
say
P
is that
on.
our values justify the norms that we put in place. The kind of laws we make will protect what we value. So obviously, I'm in total agreement that constitutional reform can be a very good tool for the unity, given the kind of social economic changes we find ourselves in. From 1860, April 27, 1860, as a church, to this 21st century, many people have been developed along new disciplinary lines. There are many social issues that the church must reform itself. That definitely.
That's great, Pastor McKay. So you, Councillor Colley, and Pastor P are in agreement, and Pastor P even provided a resource for information that this idea of constitutional reform is not just per conversation, is not just per ordinary discussion or an idea sprinting out right now from our heads, but it is something that was gavelled into law per the resolution of the 19th Biennial Convention. Then that even puts us in a better position as a church to proceed with this mandate. My question is, and I don't know if it's you or Pastor Pay who will take it. My question is why up to this time there has been no process put in place to proceed with constitutional reform if it is so important to the church? Pastor P or Pastor McKay? Why the delay?
You know, Joe, I don't know. Yeah, you are not a stranger to Liberian politics, are you? You're not a stranger. When Toto took power, he issued degree 88A. You remember that degree? So let me say this to you: that constitutional reform heavily rests on the one who has the gavel of the church. When you put a man into the seat of the bishopric, he's supposed to see to it that the laws that govern us is keenly looked at and sometimes reviewed because things are changing. We live in a changing world. Every year, every month, every week, days, hour, minute, second that passes by, we change and situation change. So that demands that is a demand placed on us to always visit the law that governs us, so that that law should conform with the present reality. So if you ask me why this long, let me ask Bishop P in his grave, why this long? Bishop Harry in his grave, why this long? Bishop Sanglo will be retiring. Why this long? And to tell Bishop Padmo that coming in now is the time.
Pastor P, while it is true that I agree with you from the general standpoint, and the way you implicated all of the bishops, it sounds very good. But with specificity, since the 19th Biennial Convention, the decision was made for constitutional reform. The 19th Biennial Convention was just yesterday. Since the decision was made for constitutional reform, I'm asking why the delay? Because, mind you, Pastor Pei, you try to reference the political situation. But let me just give some perspective, put some context on this. Our country has a representative form of government. The people are represented in the legislature. The people can arouse constitutional reform through their representatives, or the representatives by themselves can take action to require a constitutional reform. So in the Lutheran Church, we also have a representative form of leadership, governance. You have the executive council. The parishes, the districts, they speak through the council. The district, if the people feel that constitutional reform is of necessity and the bishopric is not acting, don't you think it is also incumbent upon the people, the districts, to act through the executive committee to ensure that the bishopric act to institute constitutional reform? Pastor Payne, if Pastor Mackey is hearing, Reverend, you are also a Reverend. You are not. You are both serving both capacities, Reverend and a host. You can opine on some of these issues. But let's go to Councillor Colley. Councillor Colley
is back. Yeah.
What I was making, does it make sense? The question I was asking, because there's no one way to this thing. It's not just the bishopric that's supposed to act on constitutional reform. I think the executive committee or the districts can act through the executive committee. Is that right, so?
We're gonna give Councillor Colley yeah.
Brother Jokai?
Yeah, okay, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, we are hearing you. Go ahead.
Hello.
Okay, all right.
Hello.
What I want to say is, when the convention passes on an issue, it becomes a mandate for implementation. Yes, Bishop is the chief shepherd of the church, but the convention is the highest decision-making body of the church. When the convention passes on an issue, it's a mandate. And the EC that functions in between conventions is supposed to make sure that those mandates are carried out. So I just thought to speak to that. Yeah, thank you.
So, Councillor Colley, since you are on and you are hearing us now, you gave a list of items that constitute eligibility for a candidate running for the bishop position in our church, the bishopric. That list excludes roster or active pastor.
All right, folks. Happy Father's Day again.
Right.
As you all know, we are having some challenges with connectivity. So please bear with us.
I guess because it's raining in Monrovia.
Yeah, it's raining in Monrovia, so please bear with us, please. Oh, okay.
Right.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, okay. Someone asked a question before I went off.
I was asking a question, and that has to do with the list from the Constitution that constitutes eligibility requirements for a candidate running for the bishopric. That list does not include roster or active pastor. Are you trying to say that there should be no conversation about roster or active pastor for someone as a requirement for someone who is contesting the bishopric?
You know, Barajokai, election has its own tension. Election
Well, we don't know.
Hello.
Yeah, Pastor P, we
Election
can
has
hear
its
you. Good to have you back. Councillor Colley is speaking, so let's just let him land.
election has its own tension. So when the election is around the corner, especially for a church like the Lutheran Church that has had a system of electioneering over the years. You know, tension, our elections, our conventions have always been, election conventions have always been characterized by tension because of the system of election. And so when election is around and someone wants to pick up a point to run with, it should be grounded in the Constitution. Somebody should ask, why did the election committee post this provision as the eligibility criteria for the office of bishop during the convention? Because this is what the Constitution provides. I'm sure those men and women who sat on the committee read this Constitution and saw exactly the area that addressed eligibility. That was why they published this as the eligibility criteria for the office of bishop. The point I'm making is if we decide to use ITIF, it has to be in different contexts. I could see ITIF this way because the eligibility criteria say you must have served as a pastor of the Lutheran Church in Liberia for 10 years. It does not say 10 years immediately next to the convention. It says 10 years. That can be interpreted as saying from the time you were ordained to this time you vying for the post of bishop, you must have served the LCL as a pastor for at least 10 years. That is the meaning of that. All right? When we decide to look at the word ITIF could mean, in fact, roster. All of those who have been ordained in the LCL are roster pastors. Whether dead or alive are roster pastors. They are on the roster. So when it comes to using ITIF to form part of the criteria for the office of bishop, it could mean be ITIF in ministry. Being active in ministry may not necessarily mean being in Liberia. If you read the bylaws of this constitution, it says the LCL is in partnership with the ELCA, with the church in Sweden, with the church in the Germany, right? Yes. These are all partners to the LCL. So if an LCL pastor leave from here and travel to any of these places, the word active in this context would mean this pastor should be active in ministry with the Lutheran Church in that place. What is difficult in having the ELCA right to say that Josiah Jokal is in active ministry here? He has been assigned to a local parish here. He's in active ministry. The body of Christ is not divided. Right. We cannot draw a line between our brothers who have gone to advance themselves to come back to add value to the church. No pastor here will reject any opportunity of that nature. So if a study opportunity comes to go to qualify yourself, knowing that they are Liberians, one day they will return. When they return with the education acquired, they are coming to add value to the Lutheran Church in Liberia. They should not be stopped from providing services to their church. They should not be stopped from vying for leadership position in their church to serve. When you do that, you divide the body of Christ. That is a divisive policy. And if you put it in the Constitution, that Constitution is discriminatory. That is where I'm coming from.
So, Councillor, I'm coming to you, Jerry, Reverend Yakwazua, but let me just take this to Pastor P. So, Councillor, in other words, there is no basis to even enshrine active or roster pastor in an anticipated reformed constitution. Even if we reform the constitution, there is no need to explicitly place those words in the as part of the list of the eligibility criteria? Pastor Yakpazo, you can opine why he's
that is not what I'm,
uh-huh.
yeah, that is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the reason why some of our pastors took this and ran with it is because of the weaknesses in the Constitution. So when you order a constitutional reform, if the office of the bishop constitute a committee to look at the Constitution and consider the rest for reform purpose, the objective this time around will be to make sure there's clarity. Those ambiguities in the Constitution that Pastor Pei has alluded to, I agree with him, those ambiguities should be addressed. We should be able to be, the reason why we are disagreeing is because those clarities are not placed in the Constitution. So ITEF will be used in the new Constitution, but it will be explained what it means, what ITEF means. And I just said to you, ITEF in my mind should mean the pastor should still be in active ministry, irrespective of where they are. These places we're talking about are places where the LCL has partnership with. The LCL has partnership with the ELCA, with the church in Sweden, with the church in Germany, and somewhere else.
The World Council of Churches.
It's difficult in enshrining in the Constitution that if a pastor travels from here and goes to Sweden, correct, and go to Sweden or America, all you need to do is ask the ELCA to write on that pastor, to recommend that pastor before he's cleared to contest the office of bishop, to be convinced that he is engaged in active ministry. So this is the context we will use active, but not using active divisively.
Good.
That is where I'm coming from.
Thank you for that clarification. And we'll go to Pastor Pei. We got to be fair to Pastor Pei. Pastor Pei provided a response to my question initially regarding the constitutional reform process being delayed. And he responded, recounting, the tenures of other bishops of the church and even ended up with Bishop Sianglo. So what I was trying to say was that to draw an analogy between our system of governance in the church to that of the national leadership, because we have a representative form where, districts and parishes are represented right there on the executive committee of the church. And I think there are structures, the bishopric, the executive council, the districts. And I think it is the responsibility of everyone in the church when a resolution is instituted, is passed of that nature. If even the bishopric doesn't act, I think it is also the responsibility of the executive committee to arouse action for the enforcement of such resolution. So I don't think Pastor Pei is right to just blame the delay on the bishopric. I think the executive council also has a role. The districts also have a role through the pastors, through the leaderships in those parishes and those districts.
Okay, let me say this to you. I think you were asking why the delay. If you are talking in terms of now,
hello.
You can hear me, right?
Pastor Maki, we can hear you. So just stand by a little bit. Thank God you are back. Pastor Pei is speaking. Let's just hear him out.
Yeah, why don't we listen to, because he quick to go off, so let him speak.
You can just end your statement, then we go to Pastor Maki.
Yeah, and I just want to say to you that the convention gave a mandatory resolution.
Yeah.
And that is the responsibility of the incoming leadership to set up a well selected and constitutional committee to look at this constitution we have and to prepare a revise that will be contextualized. So it is not late. And I think it's appropriate that this outgoing leadership should not form the committee. It should be formed by this incoming leadership, which I know they will do at the executive council sitting.
Oh, that's a good one. I mean, that lays everything to rest. So now it's not rested just on the bishopric, it's also the executive council. We now go over to Freetown to the ambassador, who will come in. Ambassador Tableau.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. And I want to say thank you to the guests. I think, Council, you are opening a lot of areas that we need to look at very critically. But Reverend Pay, my questions to you. I don't know, it was the convention. This just in a convention. Correct me if I'm wrong. In our last podcast with you and many other guests, we understood that there was a resolution passed. And the resolution talked about the pastors in an effort to minimize tension in electioneering processes. The pastor agreed to water down on some issues, at least maybe one or two candidates. And after which they bring to the convention, I think, to pass on for elections. My question to you, Reverend P, I want to know, where was the reliance for that action? Is it based in the Constitution? Is it constitutional? Can you please speak to that?
And you are you hearing me?
You can start over.
No,
the decision
you can start
of
over.
the convention.
We are hearing you, but please start over.
Do you, Jared, do you expect me to answer that question? I said no, because that was the decision of the convention. It was the convention who mandated the pastors to go into their ministerium and select or vote whatever process they will use. That process is going to be determined by the Board of Ministry, Theology, and Evangelism. And I think, in my mind, when a method is being developed, it should be inserted in the Constitution and brought at the executive. It should be brought to the Executive Council, because there the board reports. But I cannot answer that question because it was the convention mandate. So I don't have a reliance. I really don't have until the Constitution is revised. It is the Constitution that will give the reliance, not me as the person. If you ask me for my personal opinion, this is what I have to say to you. And that I think to reduce this whole tension.
No, continue.
Are you with me?
Make a follow-up. Continue. I will make a follow-up. Continue.
Are you with me?
Yes, continue on your thought, Reverend.
Yeah,
and then after I will make a follow-up.
You want to follow up, Jerry?
And I think the convention, the 19th biannual convention comprises members of this church. They have seen how we've been running around campaigning, and I must admit, this campaign that we went through went out of order. I mean, that was the first time the LCL campaigner got on the radio, like the outside politicians. And I think, like Collie said, these things can really hurt. We are just one church, a very small, we occupy a very small portion of God's word. So if the pastors can be trusted by the members, saying bishop can only come from amongst the pastors, the pastor can go back into their room like we did in 2005. with Dix and unanimously select one of the senior or most senior or whoever will qualify and bring the person to the convention so we can stop this tension, so we can stop hurting each other through campaign. And you know, when you go through campaign is not void of political talks. I must say to you, we all know what campaign is. Campaign is a fight. Everybody is fighting to win. So I think the convention made a brilliant decision, but it needs to be refined. It is still raw, it's diamond in the rough. It needs to be refined so that it will be accepted by more people. If you talk about reliance, that's my explanation, but I think the Constitution should be able to explain that if it is revised in the most appropriate way.
All right. So I would just want to make a follow-up, but not to you, Reverend Pay, and then I will maybe I want to make a follow-up, and Councillor Colley, I would like to get your insight on this follow-up. I know fully well that the convention is the highest decision making about it, but I'm not too sure the convention, what happens at the convention is precedence. I think what happens at the convention should be tradition, because as a lawyer, what should be precedence and proviso should be something that is passed by an authority that we have the constitutional right to doing so in so far that it speaks to the serious legality of the issue. For example, law, if the Supreme Court hand down a verdict, it becomes a case law, it becomes a law. But I'm not too sure that, with the exception of some administrative or tools that we have, the executive body will just be able to come up with something, and then we'll say, okay, yes, and no, it becomes a law. So my point here, and forgive my ignorance, Council, but I think we'll learn from you. If the Reverend is contending that this issue is for trust and to water down tension, do you see it as a legal luminary? Do you see it as a point of convergence where the ministerium, as is stated, and the laity will be able to form a midpoint as it relates to the issue of selecting a bishop? And I will give you an example. What if, for example, Reverend Yagbazo, pastor who is qualified to be a bishop, and Reverend Thomas Pay, they get up in a room, and there the final analysis, Reverend Yagbazo is strangulated for the fact of age. Reverend Thomas Pay is the most senior pastor. They strangulate Reverend Yagbazo there. And the ladies among themselves know that Reverend Yagbazo perhaps had a pusher, and he can make the needed change. And they come and say, okay, we'll take Reverend Pay and Brother Josiah Joker, for example, Brother Josiah Joker is pastor. How does that in sync with the laity? Don't you think we're trying to avoid one issue and we're digging hole to create another issue? I just want to know that.
Thank you, Brother Taplo. You know,
Wait. Can I come in before, because you're throwing a rock into Collins, please. Information. Before Collins can come to answer that. No, I want to say that before calling it, because the way you're presenting here, you're not presenting what's supposed to happen. When we enter that room, we will vote. If my son Yagbazo is a contestant, his name will be written on the ballot paper among the pastor or the two people, and they will vote. If he wins, he is the bishop. If the other person wins, he is the bishop. We're not going there to go just select somebody like that. No. There has to be a vote taken. I want to think so.
How will
go ahead,
he be the bishop? Councillor, before you go ahead, Reverend, how will he be the bishop when you guys got to submit the names to the laity for voting? That's the confusing part I'm talking about. Why can't we just vote once and for all? Why must we leave it to a ministerium to go and select and then come back to the laity and the laity to take the decision? My point is, It can only, there should be some rationale behind that, and the rationale I'm not getting from the pastoral and the clergy board. What's the rationale behind the ministerium going to select? Is it to look at some age? I just put in monkey range. Let me put it that way. Yabazo, you young men, so chance we pay will go on this thing, so we select pay. No, I mean, what's the rationale behind that? Because it will be susceptible to the latest for the latest to vote.
Jerry, do not put the cart before the horse. It has not come. When it comes, the BMTEA will design the process. And the process design will be acceptable to everybody, all the ministers, roster ministers. And then when we agree to that, that is what we live by. So we can begin to render that wrong when we have not seen what process is supposed to go through. The BMTEA will do that. So why don't we leave this one here and don't preempt anything and see what will happen? The Lutheran connection is still here.
Jerry, Jerry, before Councillor comes in, please hold your thought. I mean, just hold your thought. Know that you're going to make your intervention. But Pastor P, I think there is something amiss here. And what is amiss is the text of the resolution. What does the text of the resolution say? What the ministerium should do? Should the ministerium select senior pastors, or should the ministerium hold election to identify the candidates? Because the two candidates in question, correct me if I'm wrong, to elect the candidates and put them forth to the laity and the pastors to elect the bishop. Is that the text of the resolution? Because when we understand the text of the resolution, then we wouldn't have all this back and forth, you know. So, Pastor Phil, what is the text?
Unfortunately, the minutes of the 19th biannual convention is not with me. I can't say exactly what is written there, but they did not say, even if they have said go and select or go and elect or go and come back and present, the BMTEA has the undeniable responsibility to do the right thing, and the right thing to be done in that place will be election.
Great.
Not selection.
So I will appeal, Pastor Pay, to you that let's pretend as though we are just working on this as a new instrument, so that we can hear from all sides, from all the angles, with open minds, you know. In a way that will provide the kind of information that everyone can consume. So with that, I think we should go to Councillor. Let Councillor address the concern raised by my colleague Jerry, because I'm also concerned about having two layers: the ministerial vote, provide two candidates, and before the two candidates can contest against each other for the bishopric. So, Councillor, to my colleagues' concern.
Thank you, Josiah. Thank you. Firstly, what occurred at the convention, in my opinion, does not constitute the constitutional reform we're talking about. It informs the constitutional reform. Okay? Because if the Constitution is revised, the draft will have to pass through a convention before it becomes law. So what was done at the last convention, for me, was intended to inform the reform that we are gearing up for. The bishop-elect, very soon be coronated, should now proceed to constitute a committee to begin to put that resolution in the proper perspective, so that it can be presented, to a future convention, to the next convention for passage. Now, at that point, at that point, the convention will have the right to go back on the test of the resolution that was passed in the last convention, and then do the right thing. So that is the way I see it. So Bishop now, right after the coronation, should proceed to identify people in the church who can begin to work on the draft of the new constitution. Of course, as I said earlier, those who work on the existing constitution did a good job. When we talk about revision of the constitution, we're not talking about touching everything in the constitution. We're looking at specific provisions that got weaknesses. Those weaknesses are what we'll be working on to strengthen, so that we address the ambiguities in the constitution, we provide more clarity in the constitution, so that there can be room for confusion or conflict in the future. And as to dealing with the election system in the form and manner as not to include the laity. Again, the laity is part of the convention. So the laity will have to vote, will have to participate in the discussions in passing on that revised version of the Constitution. So if the idea that was crafted at the last convention will pass through the scrutiny of the laity, so be it. But for us, for me, the way I see it is, I want us to go to convention in the future without seeing what we saw in the last convention. Because if we continue on that path, the church will break down. There will be a serious division in the church. We don't want to reach the point where pastors will start to break away. Okay? Pastors will start to break away. All right? Already we have a lot of loopholes here, okay, that could lead to some conflict in the church, which we're not talking about now. But when that committee is constituted, we will provide them the needed information for them to address all of those little concerns. For example, before I pause, if you look at this provision that has to do with property acquisition, which we're not talking about tonight, but the Constitution says all properties, real properties of the church, shall belong to the LCL. Right? That's what the Constitution says. The parishes shall be custodians of those properties, but those properties shall be owned by the LCL. But if you look at the current situation in the church, there are properties around the country in the name of individual parishes. In the name of individual parishes. By that I mean the title document in the name of the parish. When the convention passed on that and had it included in the Constitution that all properties of the church will belong to the LCL, they shouldn't have stopped there. They should have set up a committee to do a resurvey of all of those properties, place them in the LCL name, with the parishes becoming custodians. You know where the conflict comes? If the property is in the name of a local parish and they're going into a lease, who signs that lease on behalf of the LCL? Who signs that lease? Is it the bishop signing and the local parish witnessing? Is it the local parish signing and the bishop office witnessing? You see what we're talking about? And the party coming to lease is doing business with the local parish, is looking at the deed. The deed is in the name of the local parish. It will become problematic if somebody is coming from the other side, even though head of the church, chief shepherd of the church, coming to sign the deed. Among the leadership of the local parish, that local parish leadership, the pastor in charge, the assistant pastor, the associate pastor, the parish council chair, headquarters has no name listed there. So this person will want to do business with the local parish. So when you pass a law like that, you need to change the names on the title. Ownership goes by what is written on the title. not by constitution. When you're entering a lease, you're not going to attach the Lutheran Church constitution to that lease. You will not attach it to that lease. Okay? So those properties should be placed in the name of the LCL, with the local parishes being custodian. But if you pass the law and you leave the properties in the name of the local, the individual parishes, is a source of conflict.
It's not
a
for
source
them.
of correct. Those, but so there are a lot of other areas that we have identified that when the bishop sets up the committee, we will assist them. We will provide them information. Yeah.
That's good. And that is a hope. That is a hope we can rely on. Like somebody like you, to be a resource to support such initiative. That is a hope. And we like the fact that you are unraveling some of these loopholes, that have the potential to create future problems. We'll now go to Reverend Yakwazuo. Reverend Yakwazuo, I'm sure you have some questions or concern or some insights to share.
Reverend, we cannot hear you. Reverend, maybe you want to log. Reverend, hello?
Just increase your volume. We are hearing sound from you.
Reverend. Yeah.
Reverend, maybe you want to log off and come back.
Reverend,
no, Reverend, you will need to log off. No, Josiah, I know what happened. Reverend, you need to log and come back. I think Reverend using a phone and he received a call. That's what happened. So he needs to log off and come back in.
While waiting for Reverend to come back in, we're going to take a comment from Reverend McKay, then we're going to recognize our viewers quickly, and then we're going to go back to Reverend McKay. You were in flight when you got disconnected. You can go ahead and complete your point.
Sorry about the internet.
We can recognize our viewers. Go ahead, Reverend McKay.
Hello?
Yes, everyone is listening to you, Reverend McKay. Go ahead, please.
Justify the norms or the principles or the constitutions that we all make. And eventually, as institutions grow, as situations, facts and circumstances change, there will be the need to revisit some of the governance documents that address those issues at the time when they were seen to be relevant for constituting the kind of laws that we made. So I agree with you that the constitutional reform is necessary for the unity of the church. In fact, as a church, Lutheran Church in Liberia, or Lutherans everywhere in the world, we are a reforming church. I don't have anything against that. I like to focus my discussion on, and I do like the fact that Councillor Colley recognized the role, the effort, the Constitution Committee played in making the constitution of the LCL that we are now grappling with. I'd like to focus my attention on the part of the constitution that he referred to, and I'm coming to this from the perspective of the Election Commission. When he mentioned the article regarding the qualification of candidates for the position of bishop in the LCL. What Councillor Colley didn't mention was Article 3, Article 4, Section 3 of the Constitution. Hello?
We are listening.
Article 4, Section 3 of the Constitution, he didn't mention that. That says all individual membership of the LCL shall be an LCL parish. Then he didn't mention Article 5, Section 1, which speaks of the total number of delegates from each parish to a convention of the LCL are determined by the Executive Council shall be a minimum of 5 delegates broken down as follows. Lutheran Church men 1, Lutheran Church women 1, Lutheran Church youth 1, and all ministers assigned at the parish assigned. All ministers, the assigned is in the past tense, assigned. Councillor Colley didn't also mention to you Article 5, Section E, which states that all delegates must be community members who are active in the life and work of the party for at least 5 years prior to the convention. So yes, he is right that we put that there to talk about the academic qualification for become a bishop of the church. However, mindful of the fact that those who are out of the country and who may have the intention of becoming bishop for the church, to avoid the kind of belief or that people will stay out of the country, whether in Guinea, whether in Sierra Leone, whether in Ivory Coast, whether in Kenya, whether in South Africa, wherever. We think anybody who the Constitution written with the belief that if you want to believe, come back to the country at least 5 years and be active in the life of the church. So when we formulated the laws, the electoral guidelines, we took all of those into consideration. So why I uphold the part of the Constitution on the basis of what he read, that anybody who has met the 10 years qualification, serving in places of high responsibilities in the church will be qualified just for the 10 years clause. I could leave the church and go to Guinea. I could leave the church and go to Kenya and stay there for forever. And then one morning come back and say, I want to be bishop. So to avoid that kind of thing, the constitutional, the framers of the Constitution said that would be good, but you may have to come back and stay in the country 5 years and serve the LCL. So I just wanted to flag that. So the councillor would perhaps make a comment on that. Besides that, the current administration that will be inaugurated, that will be consecrated on July 3rd, has as part of its platform the revision of the Constitution of the Lutheran Church in Liberia. So, and in fact, I believe that Councillor Colley, who has been writing some comments prior to the election, will be asked to perhaps participate in that. We respect him a lot, and we think his comments are welcome, because that is part of the plan of the current bishop-elect to look at the Constitution. And I'm sure that when that is done, we'll look at legal luminaries, inclusive of Councillor Colley and other policy makers and theologians, to look at the Constitution so that it is not void of the spirit of the Constitution and become just the letter of the Constitution. For example, what he's raising, those issues that Councillor Colley is raising are about the issue of custodianship and ownership and title. Those are very critical issues he's raising. And I'd like to again conclude by saying that our values justify the norms that we make, the kind of constitution and principles we put in place. We have new value systems now developing in the world. We have issues of HIV and AIDS. We have issues of COVID-19. We have issues of monkey virus and all these kinds of things developing. We have our brothers and sisters who are in the diaspora, not only in the United States of America. They're having children there. They have a right to travel anywhere in terms of self-preservation. Nobody has ever doubted that. Nobody would doubt that. So these are issues all of us have to sit together. Whether we will have a future that we can have a diaspora voting system for those of our brothers and sisters in the U.S. to participate in election during our convention. All of these are issues we need to look at, and they will be welcome in terms of the Constitution revision process.
Thank you very much. We're going to go to Reverend Yakwazo quickly. Reverend Yakwazo.
I'm here.
Okay. We're going to go to Reverend Yakwazo. He's going to come up with his points. Then we will recognize our viewers. And we
So, Willie, again, thank you, man. Thank you, Willie. Thank you, Joe, and the ambassador. I'm happy to see Pastor Pei. Good to see you again, Father. And then good to see you, Councillor Colley. And it was good hearing my big brother McKay on the phone. I must say thank you, Councillor Colley. I saw that you dug out a lot of stuff that really caught my attention. And I think it tells me how much work we need to do with our Constitution when we hear about all those different stuff that was spoken about. And I just wanted to ask quickly. I wanted to ask some question, not for me, basically for our viewers. I just wanted to ask, go to Pastor P. Pastor P, can you just tell our viewers how the executive council of the LCL is being set up?
Well, I thought that question should really be for people who are members of the executive council or either the office of the bishop or one of the district deans.
You're a former
Because
district dean,
I'm a former member of the executive council. Maybe they have changed. I don't know.
and
So
you're
what
a
I'm
former
going to give
dean,
you
right?
is the information I will give you is from the old order. You know, from the how do they call that old school? That old school information I will give you.
Okay.
I do not know the present configuration of the executive council. What I do know, when I was on it, they got the representative of the men from the district. They got a district dean, and then they have the district youth, the district women head. Those are the people that were on the executive council. And you also had some projects, uh, like institutions and projects. Some were on that executive council. But right now, I really cannot stay here and say these are the people that have been selected to go on the executive council. But those are some of the key people that I mentioned. These are the people that make decisions. They come from the districts. They come from institutions. If a project was there, that project was invited to either make a report or the executive council invited them. Then you had the bishop, you had the treasurer, you got the general secretary. Those are the people. I don't know what it is now, but like I said, I'm from the old order. I'm no longer a member of the executive council.
Yeah, thank you, Pastor P. I asked the question because I want to go back to Councillor Colley. Councillor Colley, can you hear me? Councillor Colley. I think, yeah, so he hears me.
I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you.
Yeah, Councillor Colley, looking at our current constitution, do you in any way, I like the way Pastor P structured the executive council, and I agree with him because I attended executive council meeting, I think one or twice when I was Monrovia district dean. So I know all of the people you talk about. So for example, currently we have like 9 district deans sitting on that executive council that are all appointed by the office of the bishop. And we will have, besides the presidents that are elected by the Bureau Exolerates, almost good number of those people on the executive councils are appointed by the office of the bishop. Councillor Colley, do you in any way think our current constitution gives a lot of power to the office of the bishop?
Well, you see, if you talk about the structure of the EC, the appointment power is not just
information.
Reverend P, maybe we can allow him to land. Then let's allow Councillor Colley to land. Then you can come in with your information.
Pastor P, you can hear us?
Yeah, he's hearing us. Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, Councillor Colley.
Can I go ahead? Okay.
Yeah, yes.
What I
Councillor
was
Colley,
saying, if you look at the structure of the EC, yeah, I'm saying if you look at the structure, the current structure of the EC, the bishop office is not appointing directly. for most of the members of the EC. For example, you find that in Article 13, Section 2, the structure of the EC. You find in Article 13, Section 2 of the Constitution. It says officers of the LCL, they are not appointed to the EC by the bishop. They are products of the convention. So being officers of the LCL, automatically they are members of the EC. Then you have chairpersons is appointing because the boards are constituted by the bishop. He appoints boards. These boards. Automatically you are a member of the Committee on Missionary Works, Missionary Affairs. You have district deans, 2 representatives from each district, one of whom must be a female, and all heads of national auxiliaries. All heads of national auxiliaries. These auxiliary heads are not appointed by the bishop. They are products of processes in the individual parishes. So you see, the constitution of the EC, the bishop is not appointing directly. Yeah, that's the current composition of the EC under the constitution. Yeah. So talking about the constitution giving unto the bishop too much power, I don't see it, because you will see, in fact, I will speak the contrary. I will say the bishop office is stripped of most of its powers. Because you will see the constitution says most of the responsibilities, most of the duties of the bishop are done in consultation with the EC, with the approval of the EC. So the EC is there regulating the conduct of the bishop office. Most of his actions are done with the approval of the EC or in consultation with the EC. So, in fact, but for the purpose of control, it can stay like that. But if you look at it the other way, I think bishop office has been stripped of most of the responsibilities that a leader should have. He being the chief shepherd of the church.
Councilor Colley, thank you.
Everything he does is in consultation of the EC.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Cool. Before Pastor Pay come back, let me just say thank you again. And the reason why I threw this question is because it's good for people to understand, especially those watching us, to know that. So technically, if we just listen to him well, you will know that most of the decision taken at the level that comes from the office of the bishop, that is most likely blamed for things that go right or go wrong, is not done individually by the bishop. Those decisions, per our constitution, are taken at the level of the executive council, because the bishop is doing it in consultation with the executive council. So they are also, but when it comes to some point, then the members of the executive council shy away from the responsibility, and everything falls back on the office of the bishop, makes it appear like the bishop is the one doing everything by himself. But technically, the way our constitution is structured, those decisions are taken in consultation with the executive council. They endorse them before the bishop comes up to say them. Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to
That's a good insight, Reverend. That's a good insight. Thank you for that dimension of the conversation. Very important. And that speaks to one issue, the communication gap that we have in the church. And I think Pastor Pay and Councilor will agree with me. Because usually when decisions are made, major decisions are made, they need to be communicated. And the structure of the communication will provide information about the source of the decision, about the involvement. I mean, those involved in the decision-making process, and everything. We lack that in a church. It's just that Councilor was talking about the law-making process. You make law, the law has to be promulgated. It has to be promoted. It has to be disseminated. People need to receive the law. They need to read the law. They need to understand the law so they are able to effectively implement the law. It helps in the enforcement of the law. And those are some of the gaps we have, because we don't have an effectively established communication system in the church, in the way that when the bishop even makes decision, how it's communicated. When the bishop makes decision in consultation with the EC, how it's communicated, it doesn't filter down effectively. And I think all of these are important for the conversation as we are talking about reform. So we would like to go back to Willie, so that you can recognize our viewers. I know I saw a message from the bishop. The bishop is watching, and I'm going to charge the bishop and Pastor Pay some money for doing promotion on the show today. Pastor Pay has announced that he hoped the current bishop will not make the decision on constituting the Constitutional Reform Committee. That is a major promo there for the new leadership. So, Reverend Pay, please tell the bishop you guys need to pay some money for that.
Thank you so much, Brother Jokai. Again, to our viewers, we want to say thank you very much for sticking there with us, despite all of the technological difficulties our um, guests have been facing. But we want to say thank you very much to our Mother Vliga Bien. She is a regular follower. Brother Roger Abin Kamo, Sister Sambali, Sis Marlin Molba, um, Brother Koklo Yankwe, the Reverend Woklo Koli, Reverend Molba Zizi. These are all regular followers. Brother Douglas Pelo, uh, and my own junior brother Emmanuel Smo Kobo, and happy Father's Day to you as well. Um, Brother David K. Molba, he's watching there from Corin Lutheran Hospital. I just want to flag that he's far away there in Corin, at Corin in Zozo. We want to say thank you very much for watching. We want to recognize Father Govego. We want to recognize um, the Reverend Bishop elect Patmo, and we want to recognize Brother Rishke Kennedy. Brother Patmo, Lord have mercy. Bishop Patmo has a comment here regarding the same point that Brother Jokai was talking about. So he said the delay is due to the fact that the resolution asks the incoming leadership for the
For the
for the
Constitution,
constituting
a committee for
committee for the
reform.
reform. So he was just trying to make a point with that. Bishop would say thank you very much for following. Um, we have Brother Sonny A. George. He has a
I
point
like
here as well. Um, one of our guests for our viewers, we also should have had Councillor Jerome B. Collet on our show today, but today he couldn't make it due to some technology issues, and he's also apologizing for the reason why he could not appear today. And we have Brother um, Judomu Colley. He's following us here, and also Brother Edward Kotima, and the rest of our viewers following us from other places and other states. So we want to say thank you very, very much for following us. Uh, we have back with us the Reverend Thomas Z. P. Castle Boston Cully. And also we have with us on the phone the Reverend J. Louis McKay. Again, we want to say thank you very, very much for um, following us. And
all of these know the
as we are
Constitution,
in
but
the wrap up stage of
it's
our program today.
manipulate
So
system.
for me, I just have one quick question. And my question
Before your
has
question,
to,
Willie,
yep.
before your question, let me just say this. I think it is fair enough for us to appreciate the comments from the bishop, and
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think this is a positive development, because the discussion today is about constitutional in our church,
Absolutely.
and Pastor Pay indicated that we had a resolution to that effect. Now the bishop has come to confirm and went beyond to add that his leadership is going to have the opportunity to constitute the committee. This is welcoming. This is positive, and I think having
Great.
having Councillor Colley on today just set the stage for this process. And I really hope Councillor Colley is going to be involved in this process. This is no promotion. Every one of us here, we see how resourceful he is. It's a fight, it's a giving. And I really hope he will have a role to play also, because he has been able to flag out many of the issues that are supposed to be addressed in the new constitution. I just wanted to say that, Willie, before you come in. So, Willie, you can go
Oh,
ahead.
sure. Yeah, sure, absolutely. Thank you very much. And for me, mine just a comment. Maybe the our guests can throw in just a little bit on the comment that coming from a very highly contested bishopric election, which was full with nothing but very high tensions. I think it would just be very very important that the committee or the leadership, the incoming leadership, would be very, very much cognizant of what had just, transpired, most especially with the point that has to do with um, the local versus diaspora, and the us versus them. That's a very sensitive issue. We got to be very careful with it as we, try to move our church forward in unity and in strength as we continue to work together. Um, with that being said, I just want to say this that I want to pick up on the point of Reverend Yapazo that looking at the composition of the executive um, the executive council, the EC, and also looking at the constitutional power that the executive committee has, and that of the bishop. Reverend P, do you want to agree with me that the executive committee is to some extent largely to blame on most of the decisions or where we find our church today?
Well, the way when you say is to be blamed where we find our church today
No, no, not hundred
is
percent, but largely. No, I'm saying
is
largely.
is troubling. I
Okay.
think we should blame the members because the executive council members are part of the membership. Take for instance, if the executive council said we all should pay 10%, it's not coming from the office of the bishop. The bishop is only made to communicate that. It comes to the members. It comes to the local pastors. It is our responsibilities to ensure that whatever comes out of the office of the bishop that is being mandated by the executive council be implemented. Suppose if it is not implemented, do you say executive council? No, the executive council go and make the decision. The decision is filtered down on us here. If we don't play our role, we have to be blamed too.
So
And
just a
that's how I
follow
see
up.
about that.
A quick
When we
follow
say
up, Reverend
lies to
P.
the executive council, I don't agree with that.
A quick follow up, Reverend P.
Yeah.
Sometimes, okay, talking about decision and information going down to the to our congregations, right? Some of these decisions, when they go down to our congregations, do they have the opportunity to be heard?
Yes. We have to be careful here. The parishes, the district elect a representative, one man, one woman, to the executive council. These are custodians of information. When they come, they have the responsibility to pass the information over to the local parishes through the various representatives, the parish council, the pastors. They are there to disseminate it and make sure that it is implemented. So that you got yes, they have the opportunity to be heard. If you have a problem, for instance, when there is a if the convention, we go to convention, they will talk about amendments. The constitution said 90 days prior. So if he has something that you need to put forth to the amendments of the constitution, you send it through your representative of the district to the executive council, and then it is going to enter the amendment roster. If you don't do it, people will not look at it. I don't deny the fact that our human weaknesses cannot sometimes have a play in, but the way the executive council is structured, it is structured in such a way that they are representative from every division of our country. When I say division, I mean districts, um, who are there as leaders from the various parishes. We elect the people they go.
Right.
So they're supposed to give us the information.
Sure.
So we are all
Pastor P,
responsible.
Pastor P, thank you very much for providing some information with regards to the communication flow in terms of the decision-making process of the council and how that information filters down. But I think if I better understood Willie's question, he was speaking of the role of the executive council in decision-making in the church.
Right.
And what he was trying to say, I'm sure, was that should the executive council be blamed for some of the wrong decisions that are made, for which the bishop office is constantly being blamed for?
That's my question. Yeah.
I think that's exactly the point he was trying to make. Probably there was a misunderstanding somewhere in between, but I think that's exactly the point he was trying to make, giving the understanding of the structure of the board.
I don't deny that.
Right.
Okay.
I don't deny that, because if the executive council made a faulty decision,
right.
Yeah, but sometimes a certain bishop should realize that the decision of the executive council is faulty, and he or she shouldn't go ahead to implement such a decision.
So that is one of the problems with the Constitution, and I think Councillor Boxing will agree with me on that, because does the bishop has power to veto the decision of the executive committee? That is not just an ordinary decision of the bishop.
Yes, I think it does.
With law, it has to be consistent with
I
law.
think you know what I say yes.
Arguing, let's ask Councillor Boxing if there's anything.
Right. If there's any provision, if there's any constitutional provision,
is it mute? Is the Constitution mute on that, or
I'm not sure you find provision in the Constitution that says the bishop should veto. I don't think you find a position in the.
Councillor?
Yeah.
Any idea? I see you laughing. I hope my question is not trivial. I hope it's not a trivial question, but I just thought to get your.
Because if you look at the hierarchy of decision making in the church, the convention is here.
Yes.
The EC is here.
Right.
The bishop is here.
Yes.
That's it. The Constitution says in between conventions, the EC should perform the function of the convention. During the convention, report to the convention.
Right.
So, and if you read through, the EC oversees all the activities of the church. That is why the EC even oversees the activities of all of the boards. The Constitution, the EC oversees them. The bishop functions in consultation and advice of the EC. So the bishop, in my mind, cannot veto the decision of the EC. And in fact, the bishop conduct is subject to approval by the EC.
Right. So
correct.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor. That is very strategic. So it means that even what Pastor P was saying, that if the EC makes a decision and the bishop is not comfortable with that decision, the bishop can decline to implement that decision. I don't think it works, given the structure that we have, because the EC is as powerful as the convention, as the national convention. Yeah,
correct.
And
by parity of reasoning, it will go along that line. What Pastor P just said, it means that the bishop can even veto the convention.
The convention, yeah. Which is
can I come in?
Is that Reverend Yakwazo or Reverend Make?
Can I come in? Can I come in, Joe?
Jerry, please.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm sorry that Pastor P dropped off, but I hope he comes back. Councillor Colley, you know what is and what ought to be, there are two different things. What ought to be, I assume, is what you're talking about, and giving all the constitutional provisions. But I'm not too sure, and I want to believe there were Reverend P came from what is. Like you correctly stated, the bishop is the chief shepherd of the church, and I think he should have some level of authority, some latitude to make some decision. And so again, when we look at the reality, it's completely different from some of the constitutional provisions. But I would just want to come to one point that I hope I would not deviate totally, but we stay in line with the topic in terms of development. Can you, by any reason, can you be able to educate us and educate the public as it relates to the issue of development in the church in terms of programs and projects vis-a-vis the Constitution? What has the Constitution got to say about that? For example, appointing committees to do a project, and I could get an example of the Luther FM. I think there was something that was put together, some team were put together to work on it. Joe, you can correct me if I'm wrong. And it just went down. And these are some of the development we are talking about, and vis-a-vis constitutional reforms in terms of structural reform. You know, we see other churches moving forward with a lot of, development that bring in resources, and also provide the means for human resource development, as well as job opportunities for young people in the church. And Luther FM could have been one, and many other projects. What say the Constitution about that in terms of constituting committee to do that, procedures and processes, and when the committee fails, what happens?
You see, Brother Gerald Tablo, Constitution is a small piece of document that lays out basic principles by which institutions are guided, by which institutions are governed. You will see that in terms of our larger legal system, that is why we have statutes. The Constitution does not speak to everything. The statutes are there to further explain the Constitution, to provide meaning to the Constitution. So you see, you read a statute along with the Constitution. Where the Constitution does not make sense to you, the statute will provide the clarity. That is the way the system works. In the Lutheran Church, the bowls are policy-making bodies. Right. The bowls are policy-making bodies. They should be able to develop policies, and those policies should be able to speak to these issues we're talking about. The Constitution will not capture everything. Okay, but when it comes to constituting committee to work on projects and activities in the church, the bishop is situated to do that in consultation with the EC, right? In consultation with the EC, but everything will not be captured in the Constitution. And you remember when I started, I said something. I said the publication component of the policies, the resolutions and policies of the church, resolutions passed by the convention, policies crafted by the boards or the policy-making bodies, are they available for parishes to read and be able to know their church? And Brother Tablo, you will not believe, we're discussing Constitution here tonight. It will surprise you to know there are pastors in the LCL who have not even seen the Lutheran Church Constitution, the LCL Constitution, right? You know that the past conventions have passed on some issues which have the effect of law in the church. When the convention passes on an issue, it has the effect of law. But you know those resolutions over time have not been included in the Constitution. Take, for example, the tenure of the bishop. This Constitution is still carrying 5 years, 5 years. So, but the past convention have amended that to be 6-4. All right, but this Constitution is still carrying 5. So a Lutheran will pick up the Constitution and will be reading something that has been amended by past conventions. So we talk about publishing our Constitution, publishing the rules, the policies crafted by the policy-making bodies. How much would it cost us, or what much would it take us to open, if we can get a website, LCL website, where we can post all of those things for the public to have access to them, to create a small room at the 13th Street office, an information office, where the hard copies can be placed and be sold to Lutherans, So if I want a Constitution, I walk to the 13th Street office. If they charge me $500 for it, I pay for it. If it is $10 for it, I pay for it. And get a copy of the church Constitution. The policies crafted by the different bodies at the BMTEA that Pastor P is always talking about, which is one of the key goals in the church. Policies crafted by these bodies should be placed in there for Lutherans to have access to them. Okay? Because if you don't publish a law, it does not end the cycle of lawmaking. When you make a law, you have to publish it. You don't publish it, the people don't know about it, they don't have access to it. They can challenge the authenticity of that law because they don't know about it. It has not been published. So get one small room at the 13th Street office, we call it information office. All of the policies of the church, the Constitution, we place them there, place hard copies there, where members can access and buy. Yeah. So that they are able to understand their church. This discussion we are having tonight is an eye-opener for a lot of LCL members here. Some of them have not even seen the Constitution. I have talked to very educated members of the church when the convention was going on. Highly educated members of the church, and we're acting on some of these issues. And I asked a simple question. Are you speaking from the Constitution? Have you read or seen your LCL Constitution? And they're like looking around. These are educated people I'm talking about. They have not seen the LCL Constitution, but they were accurate. You see?
So before you end, Councilor Cody, and then before you end, Councilor Cody, that would be last for me, and that would be last for me, and you know, because I think time is past 10.
Jerry.
Yeah.
Jerry.
Yeah.
Hold on, small.
Yeah.
Pastor Mackey wants to say something.
Yes. Pastor Mackey should come in. I didn't even know we got Pastor Mackey stay on the phone. Pastor Mackey, can you
okay. Stay on the phone. Go ahead, Mackey.
I agree with the things that I've been saying regarding the Constitution, but it is a matter, I believe, of a failure of willpower. A lack of ecclesiological willpower, I wouldn't call it political willpower. For example, in Article 9 of the Lutheran Church Constitution, appointments, you said you have what we call the archivist/statistician. The executive council should appoint the archivist/statistician. So what Councilor Colley is referring to is captured in the Constitution. Unfortunately, either we don't have the means, the finances to pay the people who might come to do this job, but he is correct. All of the theses that have been written, all of the amendments that have been written, or board policies and things should be placed in an archive of the LCL so that people can reference them. The other thing I see is there is not knowledge activism in the church. Many of our friends don't see the Constitution as an obligation to read. We are reliant so much on the Holy Spirit to lead us. And then sometimes when issues develop that require documents such as the constitutional interpretation of the issues that we are dealing with, it becomes a serious challenge. So some of our conflicts that we're having in the church are just based on our not having the knowledge of the sacred documents that are at our disposal. And the reason we don't have them, maybe we don't have the resources to hire and keep the guys on the job. Therefore, we can't have such thing as an archive and an archivist or the statistician to be appointed by the executive council. Some of these things are around, but I would think our willpower is not there. It's like somebody not willing to do something, and or not just having interest in it because this is God's business, which is unfortunate.
Pastor Mackey, while you are on the phone, let me just ask this question. You just raised an important point: interest, and this will all boil down again to the focus of the leadership, because there are structures of the leadership that have policy implementation responsibilities, which we all here would definitely agree to. So, besides the constitutional reform process that's supposed to set the stage for things to work appropriately, effectively, because we all need to be guided by those principles, there are policy structures we have within the church, like the board. Councillor Colley, stress the importance of the board. If they are effectively carrying out their responsibilities, I don't think we'll be having some of these gaps. Do you think there's a need for us to also revisit the boards in terms of their responsibility, not just the board, other structure, other organs of the church, to revisit their responsibilities, their roles, and everything, to see how we can revise some of them, reform them if need be? Do you think that is necessary to go on par with the constitutional reform process? Because I think it's something that should go hand in hand. Does that make sense?
It does make sense as far as the growth and development of the institution, the LCL, is concerned. However, here is the point. When you were earlier talking about the executive council, you talked about electing people from districts, from parishes, to form part of the executive council. This is a voluntary work. People who come to this council, to the executive council, may or may not have the knowledge of the church, as the councilor was saying. They come without understanding what the church is all about. They come not knowing what the Constitution is about. And so when they get in these, as members of the Executive Council elected, there is a possibility that they could be played on. Not necessarily that the bishop may want to do something wrong, but they just don't understand the issues. And so people don't want to sit down whole day wasting their time, and so you hear pass. The issues are passed. But again, when it comes to the constitution of the boards, they are appointed by members of the very executive council. Members are elected. Mm-hmm. And so the issue of electing knowledgeable people, knowledgeable in terms of who knows the church, people who know the church, people who understand the confessional documents of the church, people who know exactly what the theology of the church is, what the core values of the church is, what is our article of faith is, and what is it that we are protecting as God uses us to protect them, should be elected to the executive council. But if you place me on a legal council, for example, to go to an international conference to develop legal matters, you are not helping the institution. You need lawyers, you need informed, well-informed, equipped lawyers to go to such conferences in order to deliver the goods that you want to deliver in terms of the legal framework we want to develop. So the question of boards being there to help the church in its development will also go back to the quality of members who are elected to the executive council. And this is where our problem is. Two, there is lack of willpower. Since we are in the church, I will call that lack of episcopal willpower in some instances. And it's not because the bishop wants to do something wrong, but the bishop has called people from across the country. These people have come, they are supposed to stay in Monrovia for 2-3 days. Some have their rights farms to go back to protect, others have professional work to do and go back to their job. So nobody wants to sit down in a conference for 5-10 days discussing one issue over and over. So in such cases, motions may be placed on the floor to speed up the process, and those who do not understand the issue will just go along with those who understand it. And therefore, the fate of the church will be in the hands of the few who may understand it, but who want to vote to protect a particular interest.
Wow. That makes sense a lot. So it boils down to the issue of commitment and relevance on a particular committee, on a particular board, to be able to attain the desired results. That's very good insight, Pastor Mackey, and I hope our leaders are taking note of that. Reverend Yakwazuo, do you have any intervention to make?
Yeah, Jerry. You see, I like the way Pastor Mackey concluded, because it tells us also that we need to be careful as to who we elect to go to executive council. Because in his concluding statement, he also said that if we elect people who, for example, who are not up to the task, when they go there, they follow the few people who are up to the task and go the way those people are going, even if it is not in the interest of the church. But they go that way because they don't understand the issues that are unfolding there. And another thing I also grabbed from Councillor Colley when he spoke, and I didn't want to lose my thought on that, was about, you know, the issue about the land issue. And I can say that uprightly to the bishop-elect, who will soon be in office by the 3rd, that he needs to take into consideration what we call little things that matters. Because like it's an eye-opening point with regards to the issue of the land of the church. So there are, I know there are, and we can still rectify some of those things. There are many properties that the churches will own today, and in no way that those properties will be in the name of the LCL. I'm convinced that good number of those churches' properties are in their name. So that's the reason why they can stand up. And the fear the councillor raised is that if you push some of those people, and for example, they went to their own inner meeting and decided that, for example, St. Matthew, and said, well, whatever way the LCL is behaving, we don't like it, we break away. By law, you cannot do anything to them because all of their properties are in their name. It's not in the name of the LCL.
Yeah.
So the LCL should go back to rectify that because if we have them in our name, in the name of the LCL, and they chose to take such decision, the LCL can go to court and by law will be able to win those property because it's in the name of the LCM, because that's what our constitution says. So then take me back, Joe, as well, to even the issue of the Luther FM. So at the time when the St. Peter's ground said, no, I believe if that property was in the name of the LCL, the LCL at the level of the bishop of it could have taken a decision and say, hey, St. Peter's, we understand you worship there, but that property is not yours by constitution. It's for the LCL. And because this radio station is in the interest of the LCL, we're going to write it there. But the LCL could not push any further because that property is in the name of St. Peter's. Thank you. I just wanted to throw that out. And thank you again, Councillor.
Those are beautiful insights, great analysis.
But Joe,
Councillor Colley, we have to
Joe, information on the issue of the Luther FM needs to come in at this point in time.
Right.
Go ahead,
St. Peter, at the time, I was pastor in charge of St. Peter when that radio station project came out.
Right.
St. Peter did not say they would not, they had competing interests. Yes. And that competing interest had to do with the management of the radio station in terms of its financial implication. Now, where I, as pastor at the time, did not go along with the parish was on the day we broke grounds. And when we were ready to plant the antenna,
the tower,
the membership of the church stood up in the congregation and said no. The matter went to the bishop, and this is a will failure. And I'm not ashamed to talk about this. This is where I talk about the lack of willpower. None of us at that time stated that we wanted to be a radio station. It was the outgoing administration that had come and said it will build a radio station, it will build a university. We're all typing into and trying to help that administration achieve its objective. Unfortunately, out of 4,000 United States dollars we raised, out of 135,000 plus Liberian dollars, the Luther FM remains in limbo.
Yeah.
And these are the things I talk about when there is no willpower to implement issues. It creates a little bit of problem for everybody. So the issue of St. Peter, you may be implying what we call eminent domain law, that perhaps the central administration should have come here and say, look, we'll plant the radio station here, when it comes to the financial management, we'll discuss how we'll do that. But let's first plan the station. I see where you come from, Pastor or Yapasgo. But again, like I said, that was a willpower failure, and we think that if we will go forward, it doesn't matter what good laws we write. It's like the country. If the laws are not implemented, if they are not, printed and published and placed in the hands of people, they're just going to be as good for the dustbin.
For the shelf. Mm-hmm. Right, Pastor Market, thank you for that angle. It was quite important for you to lift that. That actually it was the lack of willpower. It was the result of the lack of willpower that we did not get that radio station set up, and it was frustrating on that very day when we had gone with the technicians and all the equipment to get the tower up the ground so that we could have the transmitter established, set up, and they stood up and said, no, it was not going to happen. And Bishop was not able to, overturn their decision, overruled. Yeah. So it was the lack of willpower in that instance. But I also agree with Yakwazo that the property issue, the infrastructure of the church is another critical area that needs a real discussion. Yes, and I really hope, Pastor Mackay, we can really have some people who are close with the kind of information that we need, in addition to Councillor Colley, who will look at the legal dimension of it, to come back on the show so that we can really flag some of the issues, the red flags. Because if the churches are having properties in their name and they are Lutheran parishes, those churches just have little issues with the central administration, the national leadership of the church, and they decide to break away. You cannot do anything about it in terms of where the property goes. So this is
crucial. But Joe, I just wanted to say something on this whole issue of the property. I know we're trying to wrap up now on this whole issue of the property and in line with the procedures. For example, we see that we have a Lutheran school system. And there was an attempt by the central administration to have all of the various schools under that system, to be managed under that system. And I understood that, I stand to be corrected again, I understood that Trinity, I think Trinity in Matali has a school, and they said, once we don't see the clear policy and procedure, we are not going to annex our school under the school system. St. Andrews, I remember I was there, I was on the council, we had a discussion, and we mandated our council chairperson some issues, and we don't know how the manipulation went on, but we understood that we're annexed, even though the church was not fully, informed how the annexation went. And I understood St. Matthew also has some serious problem, because you see, the point here is not only to annex, it's the fact that the management of it, when the church has a challenge, is the central administration able to come back in terms of supporting? You understand? Because if we are remitting into the consolidated account of the church, and then something happens, we don't see the central administration coming back to say, oh, Lord, we can intervene. What happened is that it left with the church. So the church will be paying endowment fund. The church got a school annex. And then because it's the the Lutheran Church in Liberia, and then a special operational account is open that is going straight to the central administration, and then something happens to the school, for example, leakage or something, and then they revert to the church or the school to say, look, you have to undergo the renovation. So it becomes a serious problem. So I think the issue is with the policy. It is perhaps not too clear. And those are the challenges, in between, that causing some of the churches to say, okay, you know what? We do not want to annex. And then as you see the refusal coming in. So I think these things need to be made clear, both with the Constitution and with the policies that are put in place. I think I agree with Councillor Colley on that.
Councillor Boston will take your final comment.
Yeah, I just want to come in with this point quick regarding to the comment made by the ambassador. I would set a very direct case in point of St. Matthew's Lutheran Parish High School. The school got burned down. Okay. If you look at the fundraising effort now to rebuild that school, It's been solely handled by St. Matthew's Parish. The central administration is not there. Okay, but so you want to allow St. Matthew Parish to raise on her own over 50, 70, over $100,000 to rebuild the school, get everything set up, then come back and go under the Lutheran school system. I think there is an issue. There is an issue somewhere right there. And then quickly, I want to say this to the point. I want to say this quickly to the point of Reverend Mackey. Not only the issue of Luther FM. There are so many. There are so many. I would say projects or initiatives that were started and funds were raised that until now. I mean, we don't have any information on that. And one thing, another point I would tell you, that I will state here is, the stewardship fund, or the stewardship fund draw, or stewardship.
Is that a just 50?
No, not just 50.
Okay.
It was some stewardship, Reverend Mackey. I don't know if you can remember, or at the time you were on studies. The late Reverend Weke Mengon headed that. The director for evangelism. The LCL, not the just 50, but the LCL. We collected money. We collected money. Where is that money? Where did it go to? So
you are right, Willie. You are right, Willie. And what Pastor Mackey was trying to do.
Let me conclude with a suggestion.
Go ahead, Reverend Mackey. Go ahead, Reverend Mackey.
My brothers and my sisters in the U.S. who are members of the Lutheran Church in Liberia, you have a new administration that is open, that intends to run an open and accountable and transparent administration. Honor its governance pillar is seeks to reform the Constitution, to revise the Constitution. My appeal to you will be not only to host these conferences, these radio broadcasts or television discussions, but to craft documents that will be suggesting to the new administration what you think, what you know as facts, and that could form a policy together, inclusive policy that all of us in the diaspora and those in Liberia can sit together one day in Toronto, wherever we may decide, one village where we'll not be interrupted, and look at those documents with lawyers, with policy people, everybody, financial people, and so we will come up with one document that the bishop-elect, when consecrated, envisions that there is going to be a book that will deal with these issues. You want to have medical information, you go to this page, you go to this chapter to deal with health, you go to this chapter to deal with theology, you go to this chapter to do with education, you go to this chapter. So that's my appeal. The administration is open. It comes from a situation that it wants to see reform in the church, and it is going to lead an inclusive, very inclusive leadership of individuals of the capacity and ability and the willpower and the willingness and the compassion to see the church go forward. So my appeal to you would be that perhaps these documents, these radio broadcasts are recorded and transcribed, and then later on formed into documents and sent to the bishop when consecrated, so that you can come downtown Monrovia, or we can do a Zoom meeting and discuss it and see with people like Councillor Colley, a very serious, strong lawyer, and other lawyers.
I think, Pastor,
and we can work with Bishop Pablo to formulate a very good policy, but it must come from you. It must come from everybody to be inclusive under his governance pillar.
I think Pastor Mackey made a good
everything
point.
archived. Everything is archived on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, just to let you know. But we will discuss with you.
I think Pastor Mackey made a very good point, Pastor Mackey, and an excellent way to climax the show. You know, your final comments. Let me say to you that the Liberian Lutherans in the diaspora, especially in the United States, in the Americas, we are well organized, well structured under ALIA, the Association of Liberian Lutherans in the Americas. So that institution addresses all policy recommendations and works along with the leadership. And I'm very sure ALIA is set and ready to work with the incoming leadership on most of these issues. But the Malutri Connections, we are just a broadcast component that support development in the church, and our role is to trigger the issues, to trigger the discussions that lead to those developmental issues. So we are glad to have somebody like you from time to time on to come here so we can ask the kinds of questions that will provoke the answers that are needed for all of us to ponder over, that will lead to development in the church. So we thank you so much, Pastor. We will go to Reverend Colley, who has done, Councillor Colley, who has done extremely well. He's been with us all through from the start to the end of the show. We were just giving the time to make his closing statements. And after that, guys, we will end the show. So it's all yours, Councillor Colley.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm so happy to be part of the platform tonight. I just want to leave a few words as my parting comment. Let me first congratulate Bishop Pambo. I wish him well in his tenure as Bishop of the Lutheran Church. I pray that he succeeds. He has the opportunity now to make history. We look to Bishop Pambo to pick the church up from the place of division. Some may say the church is not divided, but the signs are visible. He has to pick the church up from that place and lead it to a place that will place his name in the history of the Lutheran Church. He has that opportunity now. So, and I can assure him he has our support. We, as the laity in Liberia, we're giving all of our support. Mr. Palmo is somebody that I respect personally. During the convention, he maintained a very responsible and mature posture, and I respect him for that. So I just want to say that. Second, the church is one church. The Lutheran Church is not a divided church. No. And I want all of us, those of us on the platform here tonight and those who are listening to us, to know that the church is one, just as Christ is one. Yes. And so the church is one. Yes. When brothers travel, when our sisters travel, to advance themselves, to seek greener pasture, to prepare themselves for better service, we cannot ostracize them. We cannot, we should not discriminate against them. We should pray for them so that they equip themselves educationally, come back home to serve the church. If the Lutheran Church should move forward, we have to protect the unity of the church. Development will come when our brothers go out, prepare themselves, and come back to join us. If all of us stay here and so of us here, progress will be very slow. And after all, why do we fight to draw a line when the church, to a large extent, depends on the church outside? Why only when it comes to leadership, we want to draw a line? But when it comes to the church surviving, then we look to our brothers on the other side. When it comes to the survival of the church, then we know they are our brothers. But when it comes to leadership in the church, then we say there's a line here, don't cross it. I mean, we cannot run the church like that. Since 1860, see where the church is. I've always set example on Salvation Army. That's one of the newest churches that opened up here just maybe a decade or more. Okay, see the development in the Salvation Army Church, the infrastructure that they are putting up. See the Lutheran Church where we are. It is these attitudes that have kept us where we are. We have to put aside those destructive, those negative mentalities and look at ourselves as one church. Embrace our brothers on the other side. When Dr. Sua gets a post in the States, we beat our chest and we are proud here. When Dr. Sumo, Alexander Sumo gets a PhD and is appointed to an ERCA post, we beat our chest. We are proud of them. But when it comes to coming back to serve, to give to the church, then we say, hey, please, don't come here. You cannot build a church like that. If we claim to be followers of Christ, we must do those things that Christ did. We must stand for those things that Christ stood for. And uh, let me also urge Bishop Palmo to open up. He's coming in. Committees, appointments, assignments, the convention is over. He has become the bishop. Let him embrace everyone. Appointments should not be based on who supported Molba Zeze, who supported Reverend Goba, who supported Palmo. I know I'm speaking as a Liberian, and I know what happens here. Okay? Bishop Palmo is the bishop of the Lutheran Church in Liberia. He's not going to be bishop of those who voted for him. So he needs to open up, make use of all of the talents in the church, irrespective of which camp they belong. Convention is over, there's no camp. The only camp now is the Lutheran Church in Liberia. And I'd like to conclude by thanking all of you. This program has brought all of us together, Lutherans here in Liberia, in America, and other places of the world. Thank you so much for this idea. And I hope that you will continue it. Let's improve upon it so that we continue to discuss the common issues of our church. And I like the way you guys put it. No emotion. Let's discuss the issues.
Yes.
So let me thank you. Thank you so much for having me on tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Boston Colley.
Reverend
Yep.
Yakwazo.
Oh, okay.
Well, not much from my end. I think I really admire the conversation tonight, especially from the councillor Maki Reverend P who left. We appreciate all the information provided. There are still more to really talk about. I am so much, in need of seeing you come back here and talk about some of these constitutional things because it's so dear to us. So thank you again, and that's it from my end, Joe.
So we'll go to Jerry. After Jerry, we'll go to Willie because Willie will make the announcements and everything. So we go to Jerry. From Jerry, we'll go to Willie.
What are these announcements you're making? Are we getting some money from them?
Jerry, you are muted.
we need a right.
Thank
We need
you,
a right, Reverend Dr. Dennis. We need a
Okay.
right, Aliyah.
Yeah, sure. Oh.
Thank you very much, Joe. I want to say thank you to our guests, and I want to say that we had a very good show, and I think despite the internet glitches, we were able to do something, for our viewers and listening audience to get some clarity. As we said, we are securing the facts beyond emotions, and that is the reason why the Lutheran Connection is the platform for the Lutheran Church in Liberia. Thank you.
Willie, it's all yours. Willie, you're going to have it, make the announcement, and then you can end the show for today.
Okay. Thank you very much to our guests. All of them. Councillor Colley, the Reverend J. Louis McKay, the Reverend Thomas Z. P. And also, we'd like to send a special appreciation to Brother Councillor Jerome B. Collet. We want to say thank you very much. You made every effort to be on the show, but for some reason you could not be here today, and it is not due to your fault. So, but howbeit, we do look forward to having you on our show, as the time goes by. Councillor Colley, again, I want to say, thank you very much for your persistent effort in trying to be with us today. We have our shows, they are archived on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. My Lutheran Connections live podcast is on there. So once you go there, you'll see all of our previous shows. So quickly for announcement, I will leave the big one last and I will bring the other ones first. So before I can make the first announcement, I want to say that to our listeners there in South Africa, especially in Lusaka, Zambia. We want to say God bless you. Happy Father's Day to all of our brethren there in Lusaka, Zambia. To our brethren in Liberia, we are working very hard. The team here is working very hard. Brother Josiah Jokai, Brother Jerry Tablo, the Reverend V. Zesta Lila Yapazwo, and Brother Abel Lewoli. We are working very, very hard to get the show on the local radio station. We understand that, you know, data, it costs data to be on the show. We understand that, but we are trying to work very hard with at least two radio stations, local radio stations, like in the Leeward County area, so that we can have the show being aired. While we pray to God for the opportunity to have our own Luther FM, we have to partner with other institutions. So we want to say that we understand your concern, but we are working behind the scene very, very much. Um, Aliyah general meeting is tonight. Please, for all those here in the diaspora, and if you are in Liberia, you are interested, please join us tonight. We send out the information. Aliyah general meeting is tonight. So please join us. Aliyah general meeting. For our viewers out there, we want to inform you that come this Sunday, we're going to have the general secretary of the Lutheran Church in Liberia, Mother Naomi Ford Wilson. She's going to be on our show on Sunday. She is going to be coming to give us update, or as you may call it, state of the LCL. She will be here. Sister
What do you want to say?
Naomi
What do
Ford.
you want to say? You want to say outgoing Secretary General?
I want to fall short of saying that, but I will say that if you give me the permission, because you are the pastor, I will say that. So I will have honor your wings to say that. I wanted to be very, very careful not to say that. But if you tell me to say it, I will say it. Should I say it?
Yeah, the outgoing
Okay,
Secretary
the
General.
outgoing
Worry.
Secretary General, Mother Naomi Ford Wilson, will be on our show next Sunday. Please, please try to get some data, because we have a lot to unpack. She will be telling us all of the good things. Remember, Sis Naomi had been uh, 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 secretary to the bishop. Then she ascended to the position of general secretary of the LCL. So she's well informed about the LCL, and she is going to be here. We cannot have no one other than Sis Naomi for the last Sunday in June. So please join us next Sunday. Our sister will be here. Until then, we want to say thank you very much. May God bless you. May God continue to keep us under his wing. May God continue to protect us. We want to say happy Father's Day to all of our fathers out there. God bless you.